And we'll let you know what happens when the union vote wraps up next month. But sticking with news about business in New York. New York's businesses will be stuck with a new bill in the next few weeks related to unemployment costs during the pandemic, if the state doesn't step in. And as of now, that's not looking likely. That's because at the height of the pandemic, New York State borrowed about $10 billion from the federal government to fund unemployment costs. At the time, the state had run out of cash because there was such a high demand for unemployment. Remember, New York had all non-essential businesses shut down at the time. But now that loan has come due. And because of how the system is set up, if the state doesn't pay it, the interest from the loan falls onto businesses. And for many, that's not a small cost. So for more on all that, I spoke with Ken Pawkowski from the State Business Council and Ashley Ranslow from the National Federation of Independent Business. Ken, Ashley, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Happy to be here.
So Ashley, I want to turn to you first. This is a really complicated issue. I want to boil it down to what it actually means for businesses on the ground. So if I'm a business, do we have any sense of what this is going to cost me?
Absolutely. So business owners right now with these interest assessment surcharges are having to pay $27.60 per employee, and that's due to the state this month. So they know that cost to them. But I want to point out that cost is in addition to increase in their state UI taxes. On average, businesses are paying an extra $200 per employee in state UI taxes compared to their 2020 rates. And that's also on top of just their existing state UI taxes, which averaged between $200 and $800 per employee. So the cost, while it's $27.60, it doesn't sound like a lot, but when the cumulative effect, it is a tremendous amount of money that New York State's asking small businesses and businesses in general to pay.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Do you see this as an issue for both small and large businesses? Is the same impact for them? Can large businesses maybe foot more the bill, or is it paying for businesses across the board?
It's paying for businesses across the board, and Ken can speak a little bit more to the large business piece. We represent just small businesses. They're certainly feeling the pinch from inflation to supply chain disruptions to labor shortages. They're already experiencing a ton of financial pressures. And this is another added cost on top of it. I've spoken with a number of our small businesses asking them, how are you coping with this? How are you coping with all these increased costs? And a lot of it is, they are having to raise prices. They're not filling open positions. They're decreasing hours. They're having to make difficult adjustments. I talked to one business owner, he's no longer taking a paycheck just in order to absorb these additional costs.
And remember, this isn't the only increased costs that businesses are paying.
Right.
Labor costs have gone up, supply costs have gone up, energy costs have gone up. So the significant thing about New York State is we're unique in the way we've not responded to this problem. And look at it another way, it's $27 a head. It's an $8 billion tax increase on business. If you present it that way, that gets attention. It's an $8 billion tax increase on business. And in, some large businesses, can maybe absorb it better, but if you got like 2,000 people in the state, these numbers add up. And some businesses are, even large businesses work on a fairly thin margin. They're competing with out-of-state companies who aren't incurring this cost. We've talked about this a lot. Some 35 states have put public dollars into their UI systems in response to the impact of the pandemic. Texas did $7 billion. California earlier this year did $2.5 billion. Other than Massachusetts, which did something different, New York State is the only state that has not acted. They've done nothing in terms of legislation to help relieve this cost burden on business. And remember why this happened. In March of 2020, New York State said, unless you were an essential business, 100% reduction in force.
Right.
Your employees could not come to work. We closed businesses down, and UI has always been an experience-rated program. It's 100% employer financed, and you pay more if you lay people off and incur costs to the system. Here, the government said, you have to do this. And so we thought it made a lot of sense, and 35 other states agreed that there should be a public-private cost sharing of this $8 billion increase in expenses.
You both have mentioned it a bit, but I want to ask you how this impacts the people that you represent in terms of going forward. I'll start with you first, Ashley. So for small businesses, $27 a head is not I know it sounds like a small expense for people, but if you think about a mom and pop shop who has 20 employees, that adds up really quick, cutting into their rent. So going forward, if they have to pay this cost, if they're not helped at all, what's the consequence for small businesses?
It's huge, especially given what we're seeing and what we're reading about with the future of the economy. And you're looking at projections where the state budget's is going to be in the red, not going to be as good as well off as everyone thought. And you're hearing everyone talk about this recession. So think about a small business owner who never recouped the losses of the pandemic, who now is having to pay these added costs and might be staring down a recession. I mean, so we're talking about huge consequences here for small businesses, for the local economy, and for the main streets that really drive our communities, make sure that we're getting the tax revenue that we need and all of that. So New York State doing nothing and staring down a potential recession is even more devastating.
Ken, what about big businesses? As we said, they may be able to shoulder the burden a little bit more, but obviously it has this huge impact on them. But I think the impact is different for those businesses.
Again, it depends on the nature of the business.
Right.
I mean, it's still a big number because it's headcount based, it's salary based. The more you pay in aggregate salary, the more you pay unemployment insurance taxes. And it's just one more thing. If you look at over the last just 4 or 5 years, how many new labor law mandates are being imposed on businesses? Very unique things that like no other state or a handful of states do. It adds up. And recent data showed we're one of the few states that have not hit the pre-pandemic jobs number. I think we're something like 300,000 shy.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. The cost structure in New York State, the state's, particularly upstate, challenges in retaining workforce, all adds up to an economy that's underperforming. And this is, it's the old saying, you die, the death of 1,000 cuts. This is one of those cuts.
The state leaders will tell you, the governor and the legislative leaders will tell you that this should be a federal responsibility. The state shouldn't have to pay back the $7 billion, that the federal government should step in and pay that for the state. What do you both say to that? I'll start with you, Ken.
Well, we know what Congress has said to that. We gave you $24 billion, and what you did with it was up to the state. And they looked around, and we've heard this from some of our congressional members. 35 other states took CARES Act and ARPA funds and put it towards their unemployment insurance programs. New York State didn't. Don't expect another dollop of funds for this.
Ashley.
Yeah, same thing. It's a pipe dream to think that the federal government's going to come in and just forgive New York State's outstanding debt. If you're a lawmaker in any one of these other states, we'll use Texas for example, and the $7 billion they put towards their UI to pay off their debt, they're never going to agree to forgiving New York State's debt. So this idea that's being pushed by lawmakers, by Albany's leaders, that the federal government is going to have to forgive this. All you're doing is kicking the can down the road, and you're not addressing the problem, and you're really just having small business shoulder the full cost of paying this back, hoping for something that's never going to happen.
Yeah, and 80% of the outstanding debt, maybe even close to 90 now, is 2 states, California, and they're in the $17 billion range, and us. Yeah. And everyone else is, Illinois still has a little bit, and the other states are a couple hundred.
Yeah, a couple hundred million, yeah.
Wow.
Relatively small numbers.
Wow.
But we're, New York and California, leading the pack here.
Yeah, we lead a lot in New York, but maybe sometimes not in the best things. Ken Polkowski from the Business Council, Ashley Ranslow from the National Federation of Independent Business, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Happy beer.